Hi, class. Welcome to chapters 10 and chapters 11. Chapters 10, we're going to get into organizational structure and change. In chapter 11, we'll talk about human resource management. You are in Principles of Management, and this is one of the, let's say, compacted slash condensed courses for our summer classes. Let's get right into it. Here comes chapter 10. So in chapter 10, we're going to get into organizational structure. In terms of organizational structure, we're going to talk about it being more mechanical, rigid, or bureaucratic. So organizational structure is how your company actually is going to be run. Now, it could be rigid because you may have some very strict guidelines that you're following. It could be from, let's say, FAA, let's say, to maybe international, or you can be more bureaucratic. It's controlled perhaps by the government. I've been in those situations. Okay, and it's also sometimes it's mechanical. There is no left or right way to do things. They want to do certain things a certain way without any flexibility. That's one way to structure an organization. Another would be more organic, which means it's flexible and you can adapt to a lot of the changes that are occurring within, let's say, your environment, your business environment, or maybe even your environment within, let's say, San Diego, for example. So if you have an organically organized, let's say, structure, then that means you're going to be very flexible. You're going to think about some things you can change. Things are not written in stone. All right. And then you're going to adapt. Adaptability is very important here because when you are able to adapt, you're able to keep up, let's say, with the changes. Right now, adaptability is key in terms of AI, artificial intelligence. A lot of folks don't want to adapt because they're so used to doing things, let's say, old school way. But now, everything has changed. And if we're not prepared for that change, then we're going to be left behind. Another organizational structure will be to match the structure with the organization. Here's something that a lot of Japanese companies have done quite well. If certain, let's say, environments do things a certain way, then they're going to make sure that their company does the same. Good example is the things they do in Japan are not the same things they will be doing, say, in American companies. So organizational structure is the root of how your company is going to run. It could be, again, rigid, organic, or you actually match the structure to the environment. Organizational change. Every time things change in an organization, it's a little bit either hard or it's easy. It's based on how it's presented. So if you're having organizational change, it could be your structure, technological change, or culture. Now, the key thing here sometimes is culture. If you're having cultural changes, that means something within your company is changing, has changed, or need to change culturally. I touched upon technology a little bit in terms of AI. Artificial intelligence is a key player right now in a lot of companies, especially also with our community college district. And it's not just the students using AI and trying to get around some of the writing or some of the, let's say, rigor that's involved. It's actually some of the faculty, the managers, let's say the upper echelon, to get things done more efficiently. For example, if they wanted to put a spreadsheet together and identify the enrollment stats for the next 4 or 5 years, they can type that into AI, put in some parameters, put in some requests, and then they will get that information almost instantaneously. I've talked to one of my colleagues, and she is in our legal aid in our legal department, and she has a huge report she has to put together. And she started using, it's called Grammarly. She started using some Chat GPT. She started using Perplexity. So she's automatically getting ready to present this amazing presentation with the help of AI. Organizational change also, we talk about managers must understand and lead the change. Here's the key. Everything starts from the top, especially if you have the hierarchy. If you have a flattened hierarchy, then you know you can talk to your bosses, the CEO, let's say your managers, just go into their office. The hierarchy, which is from the top to the bottom, which is the president, CEOs, and so forth, then you may not have access to them to give them some really insightful information. So that's where the managers must also understand that they had to lead the change. So when things are coming about, they have to be on the forefront, the actual forefront of the change and saying, I support this. This is something I want to do, and I think that we should all do it. That's where it starts. Managing change. Here's the thing that we know. They say the word that change is inevitable. Things are going to change. That's fine, but the way you present the, let's say, impending change is the way that it actually gets, let's say, accepted or embraced. Employees do not always appreciate change, especially if they've been there for years upon years upon years. So leaders have to design and guide the change process. Maybe we do it in micro, we won't do it in macro, but maybe in micro steps. We may do it, let's say, in increments, timelines, workload. It's a lot of things that we should think about when we're actually designing the change process for our companies. And adaptability ensures long-term success. So once you actually suggest the change, now we got to get to the point of saying, guys, do you embrace the change? If not, then we go ahead and restructure the possible changes. Super important as managers to understand that employees will get on board if it's presented in a way, and sometimes it's not always presented in a way where it's valuable to the company. It's only valuable to, let's say, the manager. So those are the moments you got to cross over and say, there's some things I want to do that's going to be a little bit different, but it's going to affect the company, and also it's going to be a great thing for the employees. So that was a quick snapshot of chapter 10. I like to always give you kind of an overview, maybe some stories from my past that will add to, let's say, the content of the course, but also we have an entire textbook. As a reminder, it is free, and you can read the entire chapter of chapter 10 and get more information. So let's shift into chapter 11. This is my backyard. This is actually my wheelhouse because human resources is something I did for a good while with the San Diego Community College District. We have 6,000 employees when I worked there. That's 6,000 issues, 6,000 problems, or 6,000 amazing employees. Either way, they have to be managed. Human resource management. A lot of people say, well, HR. What does HR really mean? Human resources. You're managing your human resources, the human beings that are the actual resource for your company. I overstate that because people just think they deal with payroll. You go to HR. No, you deal with hiring, training, and unfortunately, the third phase is firing. So, three things that human resources actually is responsible for doing. Something I like to point out is that we went through an industrial revolution, second industrial revolution. We went through a lot of changes. But the first industrial revolution we went through was basically just everyone trying to figure out, technology, the new things. They went from, let's say, horse-driven buggies to actually, Model T cars, all these amazing things. But in the process of all that coming to evolution, no one was managing how it's all done. So you got folks working in the factories for 14, 15 hours to get things done. You got folks who are sick, who aren't feeling well. There was no one there to say, hey, how can we help the human resource? Meaning the people who are the actual nuts and bolts of the company. So they said, you know what, let's make sure that we have some kind of compliance. Let's create some kind of compliance policies and procedures and rules so that actually we can support the employees. And if you have a happy employee, you'll have a permanent employee. We've always said that. So ensure legal adherence to, for example, FLSA, which is the Fair Labor Standards Act, which came about, which we want to show you have fair labor, policy that we're going to adhere to. And then ADA, which is, of course, the American Disabilities Act. That's super important because folks who do have disabilities should have some equal footing in terms of getting promoted, getting hired, and being able to sustain their jobs. So with human resources, in terms of compliance, we do go through training, we have audits, and we have accountability. So the training is for employees, let's say for the staff to understand sexual harassment, termination policies, all those things that come into play, they're trained to understand that. And then we have sometimes they're outside auditors that come in and say, let me look and see how your payroll is doing, or your workman compensation department. Let's see if they're doing all of the compliance issues properly. And that is how you actually have accountability within your company. Now, most small companies may not have the human resources. There'll be one person doing everything from the CEO to directors and so forth. But any companies that's beyond 10 employees normally would have a human resources company or department, I should say. Performance management. This is something that I deal with a great deal as a full-time professor here at Southwestern College. I get the luxury of evaluating our part-time faculty. And that to me is a great coaching experience. I have an opportunity to tell them something they can improve upon, or maybe something that they shouldn't be doing in terms of, let's say, maybe the curriculum or the syllabus and so forth. But that allows the employees to get more in line with all of us doing the right thing for you guys, the students. So it aligns employees work with the goals. Our goal is to make sure that we do amazing work for our students, to make sure that we support our students to take their academic journey beyond their imagination. And we make to understand the different performance levels because there are some, let's say, new faculty or new employees that just need to be taught. We call it grooming, or we call it that's indoctrination. We try to get them very comfortable with how they're supposed to perform on the job. Employees, they're motivated by rewards. We know that. Pay for performance strategy. Pay for performance strategy. If you work well, we're going to pay you well. This is supposed to be the basic notion. You will get promotions. A lot of the faculty here, actually, they go up to the highest level, which is the master and then the doctorate. They're going to be paid for their academic, let's say, credentials. Our staff, which is our classified staff, they're paid by moving up the corporate ladder, so to speak, or our payroll ladder, by making sure they continue their education and also doing some workshops and things of that nature. They get credit for doing that. Reward high performance. This is important. If you are a high performer, then you should get rewarded for exactly what you are doing within the classroom, within the office, or as I say, within the campus itself. Then that's important because when employees are not rewarded properly, they won't always work properly. Here's a part that is one of my favorites also is talent acquisition. We want to hire the best of the best of the best. In HR, we say that your qualifications should get you an interview, that great interview should get you that job. But it's very competitive. So I tell everyone when they're trying to get into any job, prepare, prepare, prepare. Same for you. You're going to be finishing your academic journey and you're going to want to go into the workforce. And my job is to make sure you're prepared to go into the workforce, hopefully with the job that's going to fit you. So first of all, for us, HR, we identify needs, the recruitment, hire the best talent. What are our needs? Something that a lot of people don't realize is a lot of folks who get these amazing jobs, they stay in them as long as they can. Within the community college or with any university, they pay you very well. They have, let's say, so many benefits that a lot of companies don't have. So our recruitment process is pretty detailed because we want the best of the best. And we normally recruit nationally and internationally for our positions, mainly for the president, vice president, and the deans, and the full-time faculty. So the key to competitive edge is to make sure we hire the best of the best. And we've got some amazing folks here at Southwestern College who are faculty as well as staff. Talent development. Employee growth and performance reviews. I just touched upon that. I review our part-time faculty every semester, without, summertime, of course. But we make sure that they are in compliance with what we say the accrediting standards say we should be doing. We should be actually delivering this amazing instruction in the classroom. We should be doing follow-up with the students. We should be making sure that in some point we have some kind of job placement for you guys. So once you finish these amazing classes, you're not supposed to just go out and be on your own. We're supposed to have some way of actually placing you. So employee growth and performance reviews, we bring the faculty up to the point of saying, I know what I'm doing now. Develop future leaders. That's something that the human resources department should be looking at who should be the next, let's say, person in a particular department. We call that also succession planning, which is our very next slide. So I am the, I should say, the faculty advisor for the Fashion Club here at Southwestern College, which is a student-run club. But in every 2 years, your students, you're going to rotate, you're going to graduate, you're going to transfer. So we have to do with succession planning, even at that level of having a simple club here at Southwestern College. And so this semester, we have these amazing students run the club for the last 2 years. Now they're going to Harvard, Yale, SCSU, UCSD, and so forth. And so think about succession planning and start thinking about the next person who can become the president of the club, the vice president, the treasurer, and so forth. So we're preparing the future leaders to take over the fashion club. Here at the college, same thing. We have a college president who's been here for 4 years. 4 years is a good time, but he may stay for 8. If not, we prepare for the next president or the next vice president and so forth. Identify talent gaps and pipelines. We got to realize that there are talent gaps sometime within our organization. We have to fill those talent gaps, which means bringing someone who's equally as talented or more talented to fill those positions. And make sure that we look at a pipeline. In other words, where are we going to feed those, let's say, executives or even lower level, classified to the next level. So there should be a pipeline of some sort that takes them from the clerical assistant level, okay, or the part-time professor level to the full-time professor level, a pipeline, and or in terms of classified, let's say to the management level. So that's what this is all about, folks. That's chapters 10 and chapter 11 in a nutshell.